All right. Hello, everybody. We are back for another episode of Chairmen of the Boards. And again, the car is riding a little lower today in the Mazda Miata because we have an extra person with us today. Mark Johnston is with us. And I have been a fan, probably bordering on creeping Mark for a few years now on his Instagram channel and everything he puts out on YouTube. And Mark, you demo pedals. You make cinematic productions of demos, which I really appreciate. Super high effort, audio quality, video quality. I sometimes come to you with questions on how to do my video stuff better. It's really good to have you here, Mark. I wanted to ask you a first question as you kind of just say, hey, and we get into this thing. What is it, if I was to ask you what you do for a living, what do you do? Like, how do you answer this question? Because again, I struggle with this as well, but tell us what you do, say hey, and let's start chatting.
I do my best to live my life in a way where I don't have to tell people I'm a YouTuber. And so I usually say that I just work in media in some nebulous capacity, because that's the actual truth of it is it's somewhat marketing, obviously, like pedal demos and everything is marketing. The main focus of what I do on my channel, from my perspective, is production. I care a lot more about the songwriting and arranging, mixing and producing side of what I do. I care a lot more about the color grade and all that stuff than I do about often the kind of like pedal nerdery side of things. And then outside of this, I produce audio and freelance video and that kind of thing. So in my day job, like after this, I'll go film and produce web content for a different organization. So I just kind of nebulously work in media, and all of it just kind of ties together into this one obsessive hobby I have.
So do people ever get confused? They're like, Mark's a medium.
Medium rare, but...
medium rare.
How do you feel about people calling you an influencer? Are you pro con? How do you feel about that one?
Totally neutral.
Okay.
Legitimately totally neutral. Your opinion on the internet is to attempt to wield influence in some capacity, and to pretend like you aren't posting about gear stuff without the intention of influencing people is pretty disingenuous, in my opinion. There are people, this can be my 8:30 a.m. Or 8:15 a.m. hot take is that people who recoil at the term influencer are just kind of like high on their own supply. If you're making web content, and especially if you're making web content in partnership with any brand or anything like that, you are acting as an influencer in some capacity, and to pretend like you're not is just lame. Just own it. Either be on YouTube or record on your 8-track and hand out cassettes to people.
Love it. So, I mean, I know you as someone that mainly works with putting out guitar demos and working with pedals and all that. I don't know you from the side of working with other companies and video and audio producing. So, I mean, today we're probably going to stick with the guitar side of things for obvious reasons. Sure. But I really want to know, I guess, how, in my opinion, I don't know if this was purposeful on your point of view or not, or from your perspective, but you kind of take a different approach, which we've already alluded to. You take a different approach to doing a guitar demo or a guitar pedal demo. And it is long form. They're generally somewhere around an hour, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes multiple parts. And you write a song, from my understanding, for every guitar pedal, right? Like there's a unique track being written with multiple layers, multiple camera, like the effort. I look at the stuff you do like, man, this would take me weeks to put this together, and it would look 25% is good if I tried to do what you do. I don't have the skill set that you do, but the effort that goes into this. So this is kind of, I guess, a multi-part question here, but how did you arrive at this approach, a bit of a unique long form cinematic approach to demos, and what kind of time scale are we looking at to put together your typical video?
Yeah. So the first thing is the long form is a byproduct of an inability to self-edit. And that's not even a joke.
If you can't beat them, join them type thing.
I have a video coming out later today, hopefully, so it's easy to talk about, talking about the new gen of Apollo interfaces. And I sat down to edit that video yesterday, realized it was like 45 minutes of just meandering talking, and was like, I have to reshoot this. And so I scripted out what I wanted to say, found a more concise way to say it. I was like, great, this will be like a clean 15-20. Recorded it again. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 35 minutes anyways. It's a cleaner 35 minutes, but it's still going to be 35 minutes. Like I'm bad at self-editing, and this is a part of why my videos are so long. The other part is I think that I kind of look at it from the perspective of like back when I was really into watching guitar demo stuff, like what did I want to see? And I wanted to see a pretty exhaustive list of what was happening in this device. Some of that is a lot of the pedals that have kind of become like my video calling cards. Things like the microcosm are so involved that they had to be 90 minutes to feel like I had done an adequate job of covering it. I'm incredibly grateful for the people in this industry who are able to make a like 9 to 12 minute video that feels like it kind of nails the essentials of a product. But I think that my niche is definitely the workflow of there's like a 1.5 to 3 minute song at the front, 3 to 10 minutes of kind of explaining what we're going to be talking about, like the pedal from a broad strokes perspective, and then the sound samples. And I think the thing about the sound samples for me, and the reason they have to go as long as they do for me to feel like I've adequately done my job, is I don't ever want to sell you on something. I don't want my video to be a kind of like, here's why this is the best overdrive ever made. Here's why you need this new $700 reverb. I'll talk about what I like about it in the talking section. But by the end of those sound samples, I should have given you so much information about the different settings and knob positions and sounds, this thing, that you're going to know as best as you possibly can without having played it yourself, whether or not this is going to be right for you. And the goal is that at the end of one of my videos, at the end of 45 minutes on a distortion pedal with 2 knobs, that you know whether or not it's right for you. And I don't care which way that breaks. Like, I don't think anyone wins, whether it's the manufacturer, myself as somebody with influence, or the end user, if they buy a product because I made it sound good and I gassed it up, only for them to go, I don't like the way this sounds, and sell it. Like, that is a win for nobody involved. And I just want people to know whether or not they are going to like something as best they can. And my goal is to talk them out of it as much as it is to talk them into it. And I don't know if that was the answer to the question.
No, I think you've nailed the issue that I have with the term influencer on the head, where I think oftentimes people will do a 3-minute video, try and get a response from the viewer on the basis of their credibility that they may or may not have built up, not on the credibility or the quality of the thing they are trying to influence people's decision on, in this case, a guitar pedal. Whereas I like how you're explaining and talking about this. And it's cool to get a bit of the behind the scenes. I never would have guessed you're horrible at self-editing. I'm just like, man, I love how much effort goes into this. But you're trying to fully show off the merits of the product to see if it's a good fit for the viewer, rather than kind of sleazily like, you need to buy this because it's awesome, which is, I think, where the influencer term has kind of come to live a lot of times.
I think I feel a little bit like influencer is the broad strokes term for what we do on my side of the industry and everything. But I like to think that I'm almost more of and this is so up my own ass, and I apologize for that. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Do your thing.
Sure. Go for it.
I think of it as more of a like, my goal is education. Like I said, that's very high-minded of myself, and I apologize for that. But like the goal is like, half my videos get referred to as the video manual, or like I read the manual so you don't have to kind of video. And the goal is very much kind of, like I said, like as best it can be, an education aspect of this. Like, learn as much as you possibly can about this product so that you know whether or not it's worth your hard-earned money. Because to try to swindle somebody out of that is incredibly douchey.
I could keep asking questions all day. Brian and Mason, I'll stop talking now so you guys can jump in if you guys like.
You can go ahead, Mason.
After you, Brian.
I'm trying to fix my autofocus. It's all blurry. Sorry.
Okay. Well, Mark, my question for you of many is, well, first of all, I appreciate that it's kind of refreshing to hear your perspective on how you approach the video, because I think that that's not to say that any demonstrator comes to a video with I don't know, let's say bad intentions, but I think the perspective of trying to give the most accurate assessment of what it is that's going on in front of you, and knowing that is going to find the right buyer and not just a buyer, I think is I think a really important thing that I think may be lost on a lot of manufacturers. I know, as somebody who kind of is on both sides of this fence, where I'm making products and I'm also doing some level of promotion for sort of brands that are auxiliary to guitar pedals, that I think that the danger is always feeling like your job is only to make it the video as popular as possible, and not necessarily trying to carve out an audience for what that product really is. So I think that's very refreshing. I appreciate that perspective. My question for you is more selfish for me. I find that YouTube can be a very mercurial place in terms of trying to identify what it is that works. And I'm curious if you've noticed any patterns that you feel like you can sort of stake a claim on to say, like, this is really effective, or is that not the game that you play? Are you just like, hey, I'm going to make my video, I'm going to do it in my format, and the right people are going to find this thing, and if it's not for you to watch this type of video, then it's not for you? Like, what is kind of your approach in trying to sort of deal with the sort of algorithmic component? Because I know that so many great videos end up dying on the vine, and there seems to be, something to do with timing and thumbnails and names of videos, and these all seem to influence how things end up performing, and it can sometimes be this moving target where you're just swinging at a piñata blindfolded. I'm kind of wondering how you approach this with the content that you make.
Yeah, I think that the easiest way to sum up how I approach YouTube in terms of like growth hacking and all of that stuff is I have a finely tuned understanding of the algorithm wherein I just don't get it or engage with it whatsoever. And by that I mean, like, I really don't have an answer on that. I have found that my longest videos are my most successful, which is really bizarre. Like, my most successful video is my microcosm demo from like 3 years ago. It's like 95 minutes or something like that. My Chase Bliss Mood Mark II video, I think, is a close second, and that one's like 103 minutes or something insane. Just unjustifiable run times. When I try to do something short by accident or by intention, they never do as well, and I don't know why that is. And I just don't really concern myself with it. I find that personally, if my frustration with a video not doing well coincides directly with how good I think the song at the start of the video was, and relative to that, like how many views it gets, like, I won't be bummed because like a video didn't do well on the merits of the video. I'll be bummed because I'm really proud of a song and I don't feel like enough people are going to hear the song that I think is really good. I'm bad at thumbnails. I don't do the little, like, how like you gotta like hold a piece of gear and then you have to like in post enlarge the piece of gear so it's like 4 times the size of your hand, and you have to like put like an arrow to like a random knob. And the arrow doesn't actually like reference anything, but it'll be like, this trick is amazing, and it's an arrow to like the 9-volt center negative jack on the back of the pedal. Like, I don't do any of that. I part of that is I'm just bad at Photoshop. I'm good at Lightroom and bad at Photoshop. So my thumbnails look pretty because the picture's nice, but like, I don't know how to do anything other than throw text on top of it. I'm not willing to pay somebody else to do it. And I'm not willing to learn how to get better at it, because this is all kind of an accidental overflow of just wanting to make music.
Yeah.
YouTube is not an end game. YouTube was never an end game. It was a thing I slumped into as a result of a confluence of a couple different like creative outlets. And I just am not that concerned with YouTube as a medium beyond its ability to kind of like give me an avenue to make music and to hone the crafts of shooting and mixing and recording and editing and writing and all that stuff. So on the meta side, on the algorithmic side, I have no insight. I really don't. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that I have been doing this since like 2016 or 17. And I've got like, I don't know, 30 something thousand subscribers. And a third of my comment section is always, dude, why isn't your channel bigger? And my answer is always like, I don't know, send it to your friends. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not gonna do it. I don't push.
Everybody stop what you're doing right now.
Right now.
Go to Mark Johnston's YouTube. It will be linked in the description in the show notes. And you're going to hit this button that says subscribe.
Yeah.
And then on the side of that, there's going to be a little bell and it's going to say notifications and you're going to say all.
I'm not sure I have ever talked about turning on the notification bell in the history of my channel.
Oh, thank you.
I just started asking people to subscribe maybe 4 months ago on my channel. Like when I put a video out, I don't post it anywhere outside of my own Instagram and my own Discord. And my Discord is like for my Patreon only. So it's going to nobody but the existing audience. Like I don't post my videos to the gear page. I don't post them to relevant or semi-relevant YouTube or Facebook groups. Like I just am not, I've built my own little walled garden, and the people who find me are people who are going to be predisposed to liking what I do. And the brands that want to work with me are brands that 99% of the time get what I'm doing. And the nice thing is the result of that is I never have to like have a hard conversation with a brand where I go, yeah, no, I don't take talking points and I'm not going to show you the video before it comes out. Like I don't really have to have those conversations because I have been content to kind of play in my corner of the internet and kind of, aggressive growth has never been a priority for me, even though it would be great because then this could be like a full-time job and it's just objectively not.
I think you're on the precipice though, Mark, because there's always like a turning point video, I think, for most people that are on YouTube where like it sort of just catapults you. And I'm sure you know this, like, you know, it getting from 0 to 50,000 is much slower than getting from 50,000 to 100,000. Like I think it took us a couple of years, maybe 2 years to get to 100,000, but it took like 6 months to get to 200,000.
That's good to know.
After that, so there are these building blocks are like, you know, fast. Once you get some momentum, I think you're right there. But one thing I'll say about this is that I feel like there are channels that don't have as big of numbers, but they've galvanized such a following within their group that it's almost irrelevant. Because I know some people that have under 100,000 subs and they're getting so much engagement and their Patreons are really supporting them that they're making a lot more than somebody who has 2 or 3 times their numbers, because some channels just they're not about creating community, and I think that what you're doing is the right thing. Like I would say, even like I wish that we had gone more slowly in developing that, because we're kind of having to do it in reverse with some of these things, and it's a lot harder to do that, especially when you're having a lot of influx of like new people that like are not familiar with your community, and then they can kind of there's not as many people to sort of act as the guardrails or the backstop to that stuff. So I think you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, my dad is he's a pastor, and when he was kind of like growing a church and everything, the metaphor he always used was, we're trying to build the truck going 70 miles an hour down the freeway. And it's like that feeling of like the growth happened quick, and now you're trying to figure out how to like build the scaffolding around it and everything. And that's definitely not been my issue. I've been really grateful for the very measured growth where the numbers have ticked up consistently the entire time I've been doing this, but slowly in a way where like, conversely, I get very little hate on my channel.
That's good.
Like my like to dislike ratio stay really, really strong. My audience is pretty heavy. Like I said, it's pretty heavily self-selected, which is awesome. And anecdotally, the nice thing about that is, in terms of my relationships with the brands that I am close with, the brands that I work frequently with and everything, they have a lot of buy-in with me and vice versa because, and Mason, I think you kind of spoke to this really effectively, is I think that the people who do find my channel and do kind of like consider themselves like into what I do, have as a result kind of like put a lot of trust in the way I present things and knowing whether or not something is for them because of that. And as a result, I do think that like on the industry side, I think my channel probably has really good conversion rates, in terms of, somebody will see a brand or a pedal or a release on my channel, and the odds that they will go visit the website because of that, or they will pick one up if they liked what they saw in my video, are pretty strong relative to my channel size versus a lot of other people they work with that have wide but shallower audience bases and all that, which is an interesting thing to see. And one of those things that I've heard a lot over the growth of my channel from brands that has really reinforced my kind of like hard commitment to the, I'm going to show as much as humanly possible so you know whether or not it's for you. Because if there is a lot of trust in my small audience, I want to make sure that I am treating that with the gravity that it deserves.
Love it.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Brian. Go for it.
I got my camera fixed. I was gonna say, one of the things I love how, when you said your best video is what, you said 95 minutes?
Something like that.
Which is crazy. And I applaud you. I applaud you for doing a 95-minute video like that. That's insane. Cause like, I mean, I do like an overview rig video talking through the boards and stuff that I do. And I feel like I have been talking for 30, 40 minutes. And I look at it and it's been like 7 minutes. And I'm like, wow, how is this only 7 minutes? So I think that's really cool. I also think it's really cool in the aspect of there's so many of these companies that are out there, even like the Maris, like Maris stuff alone. I have this board that I'm doing for a client, and the LVX and the Mercury X and like those in themselves are just like so involved to see like that when like Maris or one of these companies puts out a video, a 5-minute video about the pedal is not going to do it justice. So like doing a video that's 90 minutes long really allows the person that's going to go spend that much money a really good, like I don't take review videos I don't take them very well. I watch review videos if I'm looking to find something I'm wanting to do, but like I've never found anyone that's ever done a review video that long that shows so much stuff. That's really like, it's definitely not one of those like, oh yeah, they sent them the pedal, and they're giving them the best, they're talking all up and the hype and everything, but you're really showcasing what the thing is doing, which I think is super cool. But yeah, I applaud you on these long videos, because that's a lot. And the fact of like editing that is insane too. Like that's just like, I have, I think 10 different board videos of clients that I need to edit, but it's just the time to do it because you're doing other things and you're working, and just the backlog of it is crazy. So, but I appreciate it. I wish more companies would work. I'm not sure how many companies you work with, but I think it would be so cool to see more companies reach out to you and to people that do long formatted videos and put it as part of like their stuff for their website and creating a better, longer content. Because even stuff like the Quad Cortex, like they have a guy that dedicates himself to doing all these little videos, which is really handy, but there's not enough companies doing that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, buy this $800 H90 pedal. And then people are like, okay, off of a 2-minute video or a 5-minute video or whatever. I'm like, and then they get it and then they're disappointed. Like I have an H90 and like, it's an amazing pedal, but I have maybe like skimmed 1% of what it actually can do, because that's the video. I got to find out the other 99% because I just got to kind of go down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I think it would be cool to see more companies doing that. I understand like that kind of stuff. Like, oh, do we want to put that much time into it? But I think it's good, especially from the consumer spot of like, with things being more expensive, people want to make sure what they're buying, what they're spending is worth it. So I think it's great. I don't really have a question. I mean, how do you do 90-minute videos? That's like crazy. Like, I feel like I'd be talking for hours, and I'm like, oh, that was 10 minutes. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so. I mean, 90-minute video thing. The funny thing about that is those videos are still, I make the joke about an inability to self-edit, but like those videos obviously are edited. Like that's like 90 minutes probably cut down from a conservative 110 minutes of like content. And because I mean, usually more than that, because I am secretly just a terrible guitar player. And so there's a lot of like cutting room floor bad notes and bad chords and all that stuff. But I think part of it is the kind of deep dive thing causes more deep dives. So like that hologram video became, like I said, a calling card in two different directions for my channel. One was two other brands who were like, oh, if we need somebody who can explain this like really deep esoteric pedal that does 47 different things or whatever, we should probably try to get Mark to do a video on that. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, on the other side of that, most of the people I know in the industry, like artists, like big touring artists, that kind of thing, who I have like a relationship with, so many of those people are because they went, I bought a microcosm, I didn't know how to use it, I found your video. Mm-hmm. So that video is, that kind of long form content has a lot of value, in my opinion, because it can be so hard to, I mean, that microcosm video took me, I always joke that it took me a year to make, because it took me a year of using the pedal before I felt comfortable making a video about it. And that's the truth of the matter. I was supposed to do a video for that pedal probably 7 or 8 months before I actually did it, because I just didn't feel like I had a handle on it yet. Yeah. And then I work with a decent number of companies. I'm pretty self-selecting as well on that front. Okay. Because like I said, I don't take notes from manufacturers on what I'm going to talk about. I don't show and edit before the video goes out. I also, because my videos I have a pretty fast workflow, and they still take me about 3 days to make. And that would be 3 9-hour days. We're talking like, if I'm here in the studio for 9 hours a day working on just that, it takes me about 2 to 3 days to make a video. I am sponsored by most of the companies that I work with on a video by video basis, because I have a 4-year-old and a mortgage, and I'm not making 3-day long videos for the love of the game in my mid-30s. Sure. That's not a thing.
That's not?
Exactly. But all of that coalesces to a thing where I am not going to take your money and make a video trashing on your product. But I'm also not going to spend the amount of time it would take to make a video trashing on your product for free. Like, would that get clicks? Sure. I think this, one of my fun hot takes is, I think we need more negativity in this industry. I think that more people need to be willing to kind of talk about what they don't like about certain products, especially in the range of products that they do like generally. I've had this idea bouncing around in my head for like a year now called Things I Hate About Products I Love, that at some point I need to make. But so because of that, my videos get to be long videos explaining things that I really like, because I just will pass on things that I just know are going to be not fun to do, not fun to make. And like I said, an overwhelmingly not positive thing. I don't want to take some, especially with like a lot of our companies in our industry are smaller companies, and don't want to take some guy and his 3 friends making pedals in a garage to task on something. That sucks.
Yeah.
I mostly get to work with brands that I really like working with, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you did the Walrus Audio, the Voyager. Like, it's a 12-minute video on just an overdrive, which is great. I think it's really cool. But people would think, oh yeah, that's a couple-minute video. So that's cool. I'm gonna go watch it. It's cool just to see like those types of things. Some of like the Violet and the Knuckles, like all those, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Like these are really in-depth videos, which is super cool. And it's really it's a cool track record to see the views too. Not from like a standpoint of like everything's about the views, but seeing that's how many people are going in and looking for that type of video to learn about it. So yeah, I think it's really cool.
I think I've carved out a very specific niche for myself, which is both a little bit resistant to fast growth, but also allows it to be my thing that I get to be like really into doing. And it's nice because, you know, nobody else is going to make a 90-minute video because like who else, like in what universe does somebody want to make a 45-minute video on the DRV? Like I did that. It's a 3-knob distortion pedal and I made it 45 minutes long. Nobody needs to do that.
Well, and the barrier to entry for people to, let's say people like your approach and they want to copy it. It's not something you're going to figure out overnight. Like you've been tweaking this over years and you really have, like, I can see even, I think a while ago you started, and I don't know if this just came to you or if you saw it somewhere or whatever, but you started posting in a real format, like a 1080 by 1920 with the 3 shots, and you have the guitar on top, maybe bass in the middle and a second guitar on the bottom, something like that on Instagram. And then sure enough, like 6 months later, I start seeing other people's like, oh, that's a Mark trick. Like that's something that Mark does. And I loved when you did it. But it just lends itself into this songwriting, music creation, showing what's going on, layers, and you hear what you see more. It's like, oh, I see a bass and now I hear the bass track. And I just think there's even with what you're doing now, you have created like the Mark approach to a demo video, and people do take notice of it. But I think for those that are in that world, it is cool even already to see your influence on other people's approaches to creativity in this industry and in this niche of demos and content creation. And it's pretty cool to see what you've kind of come up with and created in that regard.
Oh, thanks. That vertical format is 150% my own ego at work right there. Because legitimately, because it's like I said, like the thing I care most about in every single video is the song at the start, like the song, the mix, the production, the arrangement, all of that stuff. And so like that intro song I'll be cutting footage as fast as I possibly can, so that I can showcase the different parts both so that you know what's being played, but also like the 3-stack reel thing is mostly because I'm like, that bass part's really rad. I want people to see the bass part. And it's a guitar demo. I can't just make people stare at the bass the entire time, but also the bass is the most fun instrument and it's usually the best.
There you go.
And whatever. The bass is better than guitar, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. And the vertical stack is just to showcase the bass in equal proportion to the guitar parts.
Yeah, I love it, man.
I
bass
love it.
is bass is the best instrument. There's no way around it. I hesitantly agree with you because I also do truly love guitar. I think I take the perspective more that bass is an underrated instrument, and I think bass players have all the fun. They may not get all the chicks, but they have all the fun, as they say. It's
the most rewarding thing to write something cool on. That's the real thing. Like fancy guitar is a given in every single song. Like you kind of need to put in some sort of flourish with guitar for it to count as a song in our like work and everything. Putting in a cool bass part takes everything up a notch in a way that guitar just never ever could. And all of my favorite musicians are bass players.
Well, I'm just looking this up on my phone right now, so I don't mess this up. Give me 2 seconds here. Mason, you just did an interview.
Sean Hurley.
Sean Hurley. And I'm looking at Mason like post these things of what Sean Hurley is playing on his, I'm seeing the highlights on Instagram. But he's playing, a lot of stuff. I guess the interview focuses a lot around John Mayer and his work with him. But I'm watching Sean play his bass, and I'm like, this guy is playing, in air quotes, easy bass parts. He knows how to serve the song with his instrument. Like he knows how to hold back, and he's barely touching the instrument in some of these videos, and he's just playing simple, supportive parts on his bass. But then at the same time, I'm like, man, he is holding everything together. Like this guy he's making a difficult thing look easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, this is a whole nother tangent I don't want to get into, but I have a problem with guitar players that think they can play bass. That's a whole nother conversation. Just because you can hit the note does not mean you can play the instrument. But I don't know if you have anything to say on that, Mason, but like the Sean Hurley stuff as far as bass players and their contribution to the music. And I just think it's severely underrated what the instrument brings, because it can look simplified and easy, again, in air quotes.
Yeah. Well, one thing that Sean, I think, was revealed to me is he's really, everything he does is very deliberate, and this comes from the choice. Even though he's primarily using P basses for everything, the type of P bass that he's using, round wounds or flat wounds, like these are all decisions that sort of go into like how he's envisioning the kind of the sonic elements of what it is that he's doing. And then his gear is also simple, but like very deliberate, where he's like running one line to an Ampeg B15, and then another line is going DI, and he can add gain to that by way of this pedal that he's always used called the EBS valve drive.
Oh, wow.
And I thought he was using his Noble, because he also has one of those Noble preamp
Great
DIs, but he actually uses that to overdrive the Ampeg.
Wow.
And I always thought he would be using it as like its own thing, as a separate line. He doesn't use it that way. Because he was saying that because his touch is so light, they almost didn't have a distinction between the DI sound and the B15. And so like he would grit up the DI to kind of give a differentiator, so they would like blend the two sounds. But man, what a bass player. And he hit me to like some subtleties, because I felt like I knew a lot of those John Mayer songs. He's like, yeah, if you listen to Wild Blue, like at the end, I do like this octave thing where and then I'll kind of like pop one of the strings, and I'm playing off of Jeff Babco, who's playing keyboards across from me in the room, and we're trying to create kind of like a call and response with each other. I didn't even pick up on that, but then when you listen to it, you're like, sure enough, there it is on the outro solo, and just like all these like little things that he does. But man, what a player! But what I'm hearing from Mark is no more government subsidies for guitar players. We gotta get the bass players their due.
Yeah,
guitar players are the corn of government spending. We have enough of it.
No more GMO guitar players.
Gratuitous solos are the high fructose corn syrup.
I mean, that is aggressively true, if we're being honest. All my favorite, like I grew up listening to punk, and like most of my tendencies as a bass player come directly from really, really loving bands like AFI with Hunter Bergen playing bass, where you have like a guitar player who's basically like playing chords or picking through melodic kind of inversions, while the bass both drives the song forward, but also kind of forms a lot of the core melodies for those songs. Like he's never sitting on the root. And a lot of my like cutting teeth playing bass was back when I was playing in church a lot, during the kind of what I call the bass era of Hillsong, when like songs like Time Has Come,
Tenikoff,
and Time Has Come, and Salvation Is Here, back when like the bass was the most interesting part of all those songs. And so like I was playing a lot of bass live during an era where you had to be pretty dexterous as a bass player. And also I was playing at a place where you would get songs like Morning Of. And so half the time you knew the song, and half the time you kind of had to wing it. And so I kind of took everything I had learned from like walking bass parts from bands like AFI and Rancid and everything, and basically just applied it to that format, where I was like, okay, I know what chord I'm on. If I don't know what chord it comes next, I can just walk around until I find it, kind of thing. I'd be on stage playing like da na 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 ba na 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 ba da da da, because like I'm like I don't know what went between the 5 and the 6.
just the flat 6. Just walk down. Just fall to the note. Yeah.
Just walk around until you find out where you're supposed to be right now. It's the only instrument you can kind of do that and have it be really like cool and fun. Like if you're doing that as a guitar player, it's like everyone's like, just simmer down. The vocalist is singing right now. You got to take a back seat. Bass players, it's just cool.
Yep. I love it, man. I actually wanted to ask you about, I guess, your opinion about what the recipe for a great piece of guitar gear. And I want to just flag that because I know it's a little bit of a more in-depth question. So before we get to the recipe that goes into a great guitar pedal, a great guitar, piece of gear, I want to throw to Mason to talk about some of the sponsors that make the podcast possible.
Well, thank you, Grant. I thought you'd never ask. And I have to say, these sponsors, I think that your lives will be enriched as a consequence of engaging with them. The first of which is our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. If you find yourself in Texas, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you may consider heading over to the Guitar Sanctuary, where they have all sorts of pedals, many of which we've already mentioned today. And if, let's say, you were so inclined to check out some of the good stuff from Goodwood Audio, they have that available there. If you were going to check out some stuff from Vertex Effects, they have that available there. If you were going to check out any of the pedals that Mark is offering on his demos, they likely have those there as well, in addition to some great boutique guitars and amplifiers and everything beyond. So check them out at theguitarsanctuary.com or visit them in person in McKinney, Texas. Secondly, our friends over at Mono make some of the finest cases, pedal boards, and accessories in the industry. And in fact, yesterday I was flying to Phoenix. I took my Stratocaster in my mono gig bag and I checked it. I had no problem whatsoever. It was robust, no damage whatsoever. The gig bag was still intact. They're incredibly well made. And I think it's definitely one of the best insurance policies that you can buy for your instruments should you be traveling or moving with them to various gigs, etc. Check them out over at monocreators.com and get 10% off anything in their store using the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. Lastly, our friends over at Bestronix, BTPA, are some of the finest purveyors of pedalboard materials that you may need to build your own DIY pedalboard of your dreams, whether it is bulk cable, whether it is square plug or switchcraft plugs, whether you need D-shaped connectors like an XLR or a PowerCon or whatever it is. They have all that available. And in fact, Brad, who works there, can help you find whatever it is that you need. If there are part numbers that you're in need of or you want to see if something is in stock, Brad can help you do that. An amazing individual and an amazing company, btpa.com. Go check them out. Get 10% off your entire order using the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS at checkout. Now back to you, Grant.
Thank you, Mason. So Mark, I guess back to the question of, from the context of you see all sorts of gear, guitar pedals, come across your desk. What seems to be the common characteristics, traits, maybe even features that these things seem to have when it's like, this is a truly great piece of gear? Is there anything that stands out to you that is kind of a commonality between these kind of top of the tier pieces of pedals, gear, that type of thing?
Yeah, sure. I think I've got two kind of very different answers for this question. One is it needs to pull good songs out of you. I think that's the most important thing. I've talked about this on the channel recently. This idea that like, it doesn't matter if we're talking about like the Microcosm, the Empress Zoya, or a like MXR micro amp. Like it can be the most esoteric, complicated thing, or the simplest piece of one knob fuzz overdrive kind of thing. If you don't plug it in and get that pull to like make something with it, what are you even doing? I treat everything in my studio from the perspective of, does it aid in songwriting creation? Does it push forward my desire to make something? I know that not everybody operates this way, but I look at basically all my gear from the perspective of, does this inspire songwriting? Is this in service of making the writing process better, more complex, more exciting, more fun? And if it doesn't do that, then I don't have space for it, both emotionally, mentally, or physically. And yeah, so I think that is the single most important thing. And that will also cover a multitude of sins on all other aspects of product design. A fuzz pedal that that has a terrible noise floor, but has that sound that makes you excited to write something with it, is still a good pedal. The most clinically perfect stereo digital delay that doesn't make you want to write something sucks. And I care a lot more about that than I do anything else. It's just whether or not it inspires songwriting, whether or not it pulls the excitement to make something out. In terms of kind of product focused stuff, I think the thing that I look for is who is this for, and does it seem like they were listening to who it's for when they were making this? Does this seem like it was being made with an end user in mind, having actually spoken to that end user at some point in their life? Because we see a lot of stuff that just doesn't hit that mark whatsoever. Like somebody will go, oh, I really wanted to make a stereo tremolo thing that like will just have features in it that make no sense. Or like somebody goes like, oh, I want to make something that's very like complex, like 600 parameters. They could be all modulated separately. We're not going to do MIDI. And you're like, guys, what are you doing? Like a good example of this is I'm just going to go ahead and use a specific brand. Let's talk about Universal Audio, who I work with and I like, and I have lots of wonderful things and negative things to say about their products. And they're a good example of both sides of this, actually, because in terms of what does the end user want? Something like the Enigma is a really good example of this. It is a Dumble in a box, effectively. But if you really like care about Dumbles and you know a lot about those amps, which I don't, but I know people who do, you know that like no two Dumbles are exactly the same. There are a lot of different kind of decisions made on an amp by amp basis, on an artist by artist basis for those amplifiers. And when they made that pedal, you can open up the app and go in and choose different preamps, choose different power amp sections, choose different components to kind of bespoke build your preferred flavor of this amp that is not a monolith. And there are a lot of Dumble in a box pedals out there that do a specific flavor of it as an overdrive maybe. But like, if you're going to do like an amp in a box end-to-end creation with cabinet sims and all that stuff, giving all of that kind of flexibility in designing your preferred version of this shows that you are kind of paying attention to what an end user of I want an all-in-one Dumble in a box would actually want out of a device like that. And I think that showcases an effective view of what the target market actually wants for that. Conversely, you look at a lot of their early releases, especially things like the Golden Reverb and the Starlight, that are time-based wet effects, multi-reverb, multi-delay, that kind of thing, that don't have external tap, that don't have MIDI, that don't have MIDI clock. And it's like, guys, what are we even doing? Who is this for? Like, you made one of the best sounding stereo delay pedals. The Starlight delay sounds incredible and will basically never get put on a live board for me ever, because you basically just have to pick your one sound and roll with it. You can switch between two presets and you have onboard tap, but if you're using more than one delay, you're screwed. If you want more than two delay sounds, you're screwed. Like that is a sign of having just clearly not talked to the end user before releasing a product, because in a post-Strymon, post-disaster area, post all that stuff, there's just no reason to be making a device like that doesn't play nice with a wider pedalboard context.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when the UA released a lot of those pedals, that like the Golden and the delays and stuff, everyone was like, what? No MIDI? And I had this like really small thought. I was like, what if they were gonna create like a MIDI, like kind of like a MIDI box, but it was USB-C, and you could like connect all the USB-Cs to. I was like, man, and then do MIDI in and then disperse it out. And I think I like reached out when I used to work at the Guitar Sanctuary. Our rep, I reached out. I was like, hey, is this ever going to be a thing? And I don't know if he didn't respond or if he said just no. And I was just like, man, I hope as either you do a MIDI box like that or we get like Grant. Grant, you gotta mod one of these pedals for MIDI to do the presets, because I agree. There are definitely some of those pedals where it's just like did they even, some of the not even just UA, just some of these other companies, like did they take an account, or from a player perspective or from our whatever perspective of like, oh yeah, we probably should think about external tap tempo or MIDI or something. Like, yeah, I agree with you.
For the record, they can be MIDI modded. I'm just not going to do it for you because it's a pain.
Yeah,
but it is doable.
Like it would be fun. But yeah, I mean, there's a USB-C port on the top, and yet we don't have you can't even the new Strymon line stuff, the V2s of all the compact pedals have USB-C, and that will clock straight to your DAW, and it's rad because I don't use a ton of MIDI in general these days because I don't play live very frequently, but I'll build a board where the LCAP V2 will be like the one delay on the board for a project, and it's nice that I can just grab a USB-C cable, plug it directly into my computer, and go, great, no MIDI controller needed. I'm just running clock directly from my DAW to my one time-based effect on my pedal board, and I'm finished, which is awesome. And the fact that those pedals don't even support that level of it, despite being USB-C pedals, is just leaving money on the table, in my opinion.
Yeah, the infrastructure, the hardware, everything's there. It's just program it.
Yeah.
Just make it happen.
I just did a video shooting out the Big Sky MX and the Mercury X, Maris and Chairmen. And the video is way less about let's compare these sounds one to one, and way more about what are the relative strengths of these two products? Where do they fall short of one another? That kind of thing. And the thing that drives me crazy is the Mercury X has USB-C. They both have USB-C, but the Mercury X cannot do preset management over USB-C. It has to do, you have to create that 5-pin loop in and through with your computer to use their editor. Whereas Strymon has, you can do all of it over USB-C, except they haven't actually released the editor yet, despite it being almost a year now. So both those companies, this is you being put on notice. Guys, come on.
Yeah. It was surprising to see that they released Nixie 2, and you can get the Cloudburst and those type of things, because I have a bunch of clients that use the Cloudburst, and you can do the USB-C, which is really handy. It's very handy. But yeah, when they released, I remember seeing the Big Sky MX at NAMM, and they were talking about it coming out, and they're like, oh yeah, you'll be able to use it with Nixie. I thought that was going to be a day one, when it came out. And they're like, no, you can't. And doing a 5-pin to USB-C, you can get the MIDI host from Disaster Area, which will do it. Or if you're running an RJM, you can do the in and out and use the one cable. That still gets really tedious. And especially on people that don't have that capability and they're having to unplug stuff, it just leaves so much more room for the MIDI jacks breaking or things breaking because they're constantly plugging stuff in and out. So yeah, that was, I agree with, I noticed definitely, because those are things that just come on. We need to have it.
Yeah, the MIDI 5-pin to your computer is such a nightmare scenario in modern day. Even Strymon has the conduit, which theoretically should be the perfect thing for this because it's 4 TRS jacks and 5-pin in and through and a USB-C port.
Mm-hmm.
If it's plugged in, if it's wired up and connected to power, plugging in the USB-C port will not override the existing MIDI connections. So you have to remove power and then plug USB-C in and go back and forth to make that thing work as a computer interface. Drives me crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not fun.
I'm mostly a studio musician these days, so all I do is sit in my studio and get mad at things in total execution.
Hey, I mean, it makes sense. There's a lot of stuff where it's oh, it should be able to do this, and I have clients that will get mad at me because the device can't do something. And I'm like,
I'm mad at you.
Do I look like Mr. Strymon? Do I look like Mr. Maris who designed this stuff? Like, I'm not, like, I'm just putting it together for you. I'm just letting you know it can't do that. Like, it was just like something really, it was something on the nano cortex. It was like, oh, it can't do this. And I was just like, sorry. I was like, I'm sure there's going to be an update eventually. And they like get mad at me. And I'm like, that's not on me. That's them.
It's always the builder's fault. That's the first thing you need to learn if you're going to be a rig builder. It's always your fault. Yeah.
The nanocortex is the best example of a thing that drives me crazy in a more wider context of the gear industry, which is people getting really mad because a product isn't for them.
Yeah.
And that could be its own podcast, I'm sure. But like something comes out and people get in the comments and they're just so mad that it doesn't do a thing they want it to do or that they think it should do. And I'm always in a position of going like, oh my God, that's horrible. I'm so sorry that somebody held a gun to your head and made you buy this thing. Yeah. Oh wait, you don't have to buy it? This saves you $200 to $600? Why are you mad right now? Just buy it.
Yeah. There's some. I saw you did a video. I haven't watched it, but it's a lengthy video you did on the Nano, and I think so. Yeah, I saw the photo. Yeah, and it's a great thing. The crazy thing is, I saw this. I was like, it was even a YouTuber. It wasn't even you. It was someone else. They were like they started the video with, "You can't gig with this," and I was like, okay, well, first off, now I'm annoyed because.
That was for the algorithm.
Yeah, of course. That was this pedal sucks, and here's why. Like those type of oh my gosh videos, the clickbaits. But the random video, and they have a lot of reviews. I built a little board with the Nano Cortex, a little MIDI Pirate MIDI 4-button, and that and a volume pedal, and that's it. And I used that I think I've used it for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and I have played solely with that alone. And been perfectly fine because it's what I needed. But it's like hearing people immediately say why things suck and why they're the worst and why this and why that. And I'm like, and they're like, oh, I'm like, are you mad because it's not doing what you wanted, or are you mad because it's not doing what you expected? Like there's like people like, oh, I wish I had a screen. I wish I had that. I wish I had that. And I'm just like, dude, this is the size of a double barrel, like from JHS. Like it is a freaking tiny, the size of a King of Town people will spend $800-900 on like that type of thing, and they expect it to do what a quad cortex size pedal will do, that's just insane.
And also, you can't gig with that, you hack. Come on, I don't know who that. I know. I'm talking to that YouTuber, whoever that YouTuber is. Like if you can't gig with it, that's user error. That's a personal failure. That thing.
Yeah.
It lacks a bunch of stuff, and I think I talked about a lot of that in my video, and behind the scenes, I've talked with the guys at Neural and kind of tried to rattle cages as best I can. But it is for what it is deeply capable. The fact that it is USBC, it's just not for some people. Like it is an all-in-one rig that can be powered completely over USBC as a recording interface with your iPad. There's a guy that a few of us in this chat know who was just in Europe and took only a Nano Cortex with him and an iPad to do all of his recording. And he and I spent like a couple hours one day with me kind of helping him troubleshoot like how to get all the recording stuff working. But it's like, the fact that you can take an iPad and a Nano Cortex with you to the other side of the globe and be able to like record full tracks like that, that's really cool. And you can record the DI guitar and the affected guitar at the same time. Like this thing is really cool. It's just maybe not the thing that you need it for. So you're not the main character. Chill out.
Yeah. That's it. I was actually just thinking about him because when the Nano was coming out, he had asked me, he's like, do you know what size it is? And I told him roughly about the size it was. And he goes, so wait, I could put this in like my backpack or like in the little sleeve of my acoustic guitar case, like inside there. And then I could get to wherever I'm going. Cause he's like, I'm doing a lot of hotels or a lot of these things. I don't have all this room. Like, you pop it out of the case, plug it in. And he sent me some videos and it sounded great. Like I've heard from a couple neural people, which I'm not going to name, that there are some updates coming on the Nano that will solve some of the block issues and like that kind of stuff, which is really smart and really cool. And I was like, thank you for doing that. So like that kind of stuff is really promising. I feel bad for the people that immediately bought it. Not immediately bought it, for the ones that immediately sent it back after like 8.5 seconds of having it. Like they're all like, I returned it before I even got it from Amazon. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like it's just what it looks like. It just opens up the avenue. I have definitely been like, hey, can it do this with the XLR jack? Can it do this? The capture jack on the side. I'm like, hey, can it do stereo in with that jack? Hey, can it do this? And like, they're like, no, it can't. And I'm like, all right, me being my nosy self, seeing that the input jack is a TRS jack, maybe they'll allow it eventually. Like, I started like going down the rabbit hole looking at because, you know, I saw a video, someone opened up the quad cortex. I have one sitting in front of me, and they said that there was like a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi chip or something inside of it. So they're like, oh, are they going to eventually, like, there's all these things you never know that you're just like, you know, it's judging a book solely by the cover. It's like a Christmas gift. You judge it before you even open it from the wrapper. You're like, oh, I'm going to hate it. And you open it, you're like, oh shoot, I love this. Like, just you never know, that could be $1 million check in there. So it's one of those things. Like, yeah, I think it's one of those. It opens up the avenue for creativity, especially for those clients that are traveling. And it's also not a lot. It's like the meat and potatoes, and I'm a meat and potatoes person. I don't need 800 overdrives stacked. Like, you know, capture a really good amp and a couple settings with an overdrive. That's what your sound is. That's what you use. But yeah, no, I think that kind of stuff is interesting to hear people putting out those type of videos where they're just like, well, your whole video is just to talk crap about it. Like, there are really good pluses to it. Like, not your video talking crap. This other guy that I don't remember his name, but it's just like give it a chance. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of like what might come down the pipe for the Nano and everything, it's like, yeah, there. I'm sure there are things in the works. I think we've probably both talked to people on that side of things who have indicated some of that stuff. But like, whether it's TRS jacks, when you kind of like tear down the thing, a good example of that would be like people who like look at the aux and they go, oh my gosh, there's a USB port on the back. Maybe there's going to be support for like this thing in the future. And it's like, actually, that was for like a first generation firmware to enable Wi-Fi updates for the future, and it's now just it's now that little bone that's inside of us that we can't figure out what it's for, but it's still there kind of thing. I mean, and the thing that I stole from MKBHD on YouTube that I say in a lot of my videos for stuff like the Big Sky MX and the Nano Cortex and everything else is never buy current products on promised future updates, that kind of thing. Like, never buy something because the brand tells you that they have a roadmap for it. Only ever buy stuff on what it does right now, because you are not guaranteed anything else other than that.
Yeah.
As I go return my Tesla.
Well, that's like Strymon when they released when Strymon released the Riverside in the Sunset. They didn't release it with any knowledge. Like, no one knew the knowledge that they were MIDI capable of. And then eventually they released the update. Really? Oh, hey. Yeah, so when they originally released it, and that was a big thing, everyone was like, oh, you should be able to do MIDI, you should be able to do MIDI. And then like a year or two goes by and they're like, hey, a new update allows the expression jack to be MIDI. And everyone like freaked out because they didn't realize that inside the Riverside and the Sunset, there was a USB-C or a micro, whatever. There's a jack inside for you to update it. And so, yeah, that's crazy.
I know that we have to finish up here soon, Mark. I have a selfish question. This is just for me. I've always been kind of waiting for the right person to ask, and I think you're that guy. And I've literally been holding on to this question for a few years. Something I struggle with is you have a company like Chase Bliss, who I highly respect and I love what they do, but I am not their target customer.
Sure.
Because, and I think I've put this on myself to a large degree. I don't think this is necessarily true, but I still believe it, that I am not creative enough to use Chase Bliss pedals. And so you have something like the Therme, which is such a cool pedal. And when other people use it, I love it. When I plug it in, it's terrible. Like I can't get the sounds that I think I should be able to get out of them. My question being, how do you approach as a creative person, writing songs, creating tracks and layers and learning new pedals? How do you approach a pedal that is weird, wacky, and wonderful and learn how to pull a sound out of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think first of all, this is one of my like long-standing soapboxes is that Chase Plus pedals are way less complicated than people think they are.
The dip switches don't help them.
Well, don't use the dip switches. Like
exactly. But you see them. I was like, oh, this pedal isn't for me.
Like I have my mood right here.
Yep.
This thing usually lives like somewhere in my post-processing chain these days. I just throw it like in the loop of my like Maris preamps or something like that. On the top, you have dip switches for all the like crazy modifiers, the ability to ramp all these different parameters back and forth, that kind of thing. I don't use any of that 99% of the time. The dip switches I use are situationally mono in, stereo out, just to kind of take that mono to stereo side of this thing, and then turning on or off like the spread control, which basically takes it from being kind of dual mono to some to mono, intentional stereo image kind of thing. But outside of that, I don't do the dip switch thing. And if you take that stuff away, these things actually get really simple, which is nice. Like something like the Therme, if you don't use the pitch shifting, it's just a really good sounding analog delay. And there's a dip switch on top that actually, there's a dip switch on top that actually turns the pitch knobs into your 2-band modulation parameters. And then it's not a pitch shifting delay. It's just an analog delay with really, really strong modulation controls, a slightly resonant low pass filter, and a dial-inable amount of clock noise that sounds really musical and cool. And
sorry, that was clock with an L.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Okay.
And so all that to say, like, this actually speaks to what my approach is, which is with these kind of more bizarre esoteric pedals, my kind of first use case is to kind of dial it all the way down to its like simplest and most album ready sounds.
Yeah.
And then kind of build back up from there. So something like the Therme, something like the Mood, I figure out what it is that I like about the reverb in this thing. I figure out what it is that I like about the slip. I find the slips setting where it is just a single reverse at unity pitch. I don't want some crazy cascading thing. I just want to play a chord and then have that chord come back to me in reverse in a musical way. And I find those simple things that make sense in a song context. I usually write the song for my video before I do anything else. It's usually song, sound samples, talking section in that order. And it allows me to kind of find the most useful sounds and then explore more deeply from there. And so I think that's always the answer. The hardest pedals to get your head around are things like the Empress Zoya that have no bass level, that have no simplest. The hologram microcosm is a little bit like this too, where every single setting just throws you into a different form of the deep end. But a lot of pedals, even stuff like the Mercury X, the LVX, the Mood, the Therme, there's a setting in there that at its core is really just straightforward and simple. You can use the Chase Bliss Warped Final as just a 2-band vibrato if you want to. You can use the Strymon Big Sky as, I always jokingly refer to the Big Sky as the best utility pedal ever made, because it is just a master of all album-ready reverb sounds. And you can get some weirder stuff out of it, but at its core, it's just the ultimate like session musician reverb pedal, because you can dial in any classic sound you want very quickly and with very little like kind of like startup cost. And that's the approach, is just find the sounds that make their way easily onto a recording and then build from there. The weird stuff has a ton of merit. The really wacky stuff can be really cool. Guys like Nick Reinhardt are geniuses, and I love hearing the insane things that guys like that do with effects. But almost every single pedal you get has a sound that would fit in on your average ambient track or your average post-hardcore track, your average rock track or whatever. And if you can find that thing, then you just iterate from there and just get a little bit more complicated each time you try to find a new sound in it.
Love it. Yeah, I think I just get stuck in the I get stuck in the pressure to come up with something really cool, and instead of just having fun playing music sometimes, so I think I've discounted myself and the pedal probably before its fair shot has been given.
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate that. Start with the basics and build from there is what I'm hearing, and see what kind of comes out of it.
Yeah, I use the Thermae on live boards all the time, and all I do is just turn off the pitch shifting.
Yeah.
And then at that point you have a MIDI clockable, fully analog delay with presets that sounds really good, and that's a great place to be.
Love it. Mason, Brian, I don't know if you guys have any last final thoughts before we finish up here to ask Mark, but I think now's probably the time.
I don't have any thoughts. I just want to say thanks for coming on. I shamelessly saw one of your videos with the vertical shot with the 3, and I took that same idea and used it for my videos because I was so caught on, which was strategic, and I don't know if it was meant for this. I would rewatch the video to watch each section.
So his views or engagement is going way up.
Honestly, you never know. But I saw that video, and I saw that video one time, and I was hooked. But yeah, I just want to say thanks for coming on. Love your stuff. Love your reviews. I'm gonna go watch your hour and 45 minute and some change video on the Chase Bliss, that compressor that they just came out, which is nuts. I think it was
an hour and 40. Oh my God.
That's what it says. It says 145 in some seconds. And I thought, first of all, okay, if it has that much stuff, because you says it's great. That's the title. I mean, so the fact that you did that on a compressor and it being a Chase Bliss, I will say I did a Chase Bliss board for a client. I think he had every single one of the Chase Bliss pedals on this board.
Oh, that's right. And
which was nuts. It had this like RGM GT16 controller, and it was really cool. It was all this stuff, and we like programmed it, everything turned on, and it made all this. I thought I was in the Inception, the noises that came out from it, the board. It was nuts. And he goes, "Well, which pedal is that?" And I went, "I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't even know which one it is." So the fact that you really dive into it and is really cool. So thank you for coming on. I just want to thanks for coming on. Big fan.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Love it.
I have one last question for Mark that maybe we can end with.
Do it.
Which is based on all that you've seen in the time that you've been doing this and sort of having your finger on the pulse of the gear world through your reviews. What do you think is the likely and probable future that we're going to see in, let's say, the next 5 years as far as guitar pedals are concerned? Let's relegate it to that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good question. I have my preferences, but I'm not even kidding here. I want to see a little bit of a return to rack gear. I'm actively bullying pedal maker friends of mine into building 500 series versions of their pedals. I know JHS did this and it tanked and they stopped doing it. I don't know if it tanked, but I know they stopped doing it. But like, I've gotten really into like my rack right here. I've got my Maris preamps. I like this as a workflow. I like the idea that like, especially in a world where like Kempers are a thing and you have like these things that can be racked. I like the idea of being able to get all that into a rack and then just having a controller out in front. I think that as we go more and more MIDI, I think the idea that you're going to like put that stuff in a rack in the back somewhere kind of increases. And with that, I think that a call towards let's just rack that stuff in the first place so that you don't have to like pull a drawer out to make a change kind of becomes increasingly likely. I don't know if that's where things are going to go, but it's where I selfishly want it all to go right now because I really like this workflow and this world. Man, Man, I don't know. I think we're going back to more and more mono stuff right now, personally. The push to stereo was so strong for so long. We got really good at amp in a box, stereo amp in a box pedals and everything. And I think the ability to go from, I started doing ambient music when I started doing content online, mostly not because I loved ambient music, but because I didn't know how to produce music. And I could stack direct in clean guitars really easily, but overdriven guitars are hard to do outside of the context of a band. Drums and bass. And I didn't know how to write and program drums. I didn't know how to mix bass. And so I was doing ambient music, this big, wide, soundscapey stereo stuff. And so I wanted everything to be stereo, and I wanted giant walls of stereo clean tone and all that. And as direct recording systems have gotten better, when I started doing this stuff, my direct in rig was a Tech 21 Sans amp and an Old Blood Noise headphone amp that I would put a splitter on so that it wouldn't clip the mic input. It was a nightmare of a rig, but that was my guitar rig. And as the UA stuff and the Iridium and the Walrus ACS1 and all that stuff came out, amp in a boxes got better. Direct in guitar tone that had gain got better. I realized that it was giving me the ability to write a wider genre selection. I could write heavier music. I could write more mid-tempo, post-punk, post-hardcore, hardcore, metalcore, all this stuff with a pedal board. And I noticed that a lot of that was pushing me into realms where I no longer wanted super wide effects because those aren't conducive for most genres. A stereo plate or a stereo hall at the end of a guitar chain always sounds good, but stereo delays in post-hardcore are not necessarily the vibe. Stereo delays, stereo reverb, stereo chorus, and a lot of genres don't make sense. And as these types of devices give us more ability to make great amp tones, I think that we have the ability to write more flexible genres, which I think tend to kind of lead us inexorably back to mono guitars. And because I think that's just kind of the best sounding thing on a record when you're stacking guitars and mixing like a producer would. And so I think that we're at a great spot right now where the Chase Bliss stuff is all coming out in stereo right now, but all works just as well in mono. And I think that's a good direction for us to be going. I run my Strymon stuff in mono most of the time right now. I run most of my Chase Bliss stuff most of the time in mono right now. I think we're going to see most stuff come out stereo capable and with individual tools to make that stereo really worthwhile, but with an eye towards this is going to sound great direct into the front of your amp, because that's probably where you want to be.
I think you just set yourself up for coming back for an episode 2 sometime in the future to talk about the merits of mono. There's our
stereo is canceled.
It's either that or it's my apology tour where I was like, it's like the giant I was wrong.
Either way, the thumbnails are ready. Yeah. We're ready to go for that one.
Stereo.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on, man. Your insight is truly appreciated and well founded, and I love what I know you're going to keep doing it either way, but please know that from at least us here on Chairmen of the Boards, love what you do. It's appreciated. I'm just saying, man, let's see the 2 to 3 hour video. I'm waiting for it, and we'll see what comes next. But you're doing such a cool thing, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Awesome. Bye.